Go your own way, man. Go your own way. Sunday morning, Trav. We're going to talk about matriarchal society. Let me get my sound check. There we go.
Go your own.
Been having trouble this morning with my windows. My windows and the screen is all screwed up, and so I have to fix that somehow. I think I canceled my McAfee, and I think they're mad at me, so they're going to screw my computer up until I get another security thing. I have Windows Defense and Windows the other one too, but we have to do that. We have to get a new one to combat the old one. Hello, Father. No, go your own way, Father. No, go your own way. All your sins are forgiven this morning. Today we're going to talk about Cornerstone Caroline, the young lady that, not even the young lady. We're going to talk about what you're seeing there. A lot of people miss the point on what is seen there. They go automatically to Me Too. I don't see a Me Too thing here. Good morning, Alone, Mr. Capone. Good morning, Mr. Capone. Yeah, I want to explain what's happening there, because in Mgtow, I think we've lost a lot of the terminology of what we're seeing. So I'm going to share a video with you guys right now so we can take a look at exactly what happened. And this is what they're coining as Cornerstone Caroline. And Cornerstone Caroline is not what you see. It's not a Me Too thing. It's a matriarchal sexualization of young boys thing. And it hinges slightly on pedophilia. And that's what we're going to talk about, and why she was removed of her responsibility. And I'm going to tell you what would happen in my town. In my town here, where I live around a highly machoized steelworking area, was 60% Hispanic, about 30% black, and then there's the rest Irish people like me. And in my town, it's very masculine, and something would have happened here. And I know it would have happened because I've seen it before, and I've done it before myself. When I see these kind of behaviors, if coming from a traditional area, it inflames me, and I know why I'm inflamed. And no one around here says anything about the male behavior around here when they see it. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. We're talking about Cornerstone Caroline. And you can look that up if you haven't seen it. She's the lady that accused a 10-year-old boy, but that's not what it's about. And I will show you what it's about. Let's do screenshot here now. So we get infinity screen. I'm just going to show you some short clips of
Sunday morning.
Yeah, let's bring this back up so I can see. And yeah, we'll bring you here. This let me enlarge this to full screen. Oops, that's bring that back up. Theater mode, at least. There's this woman here. Oops, you see what happens there? But what's happening here is she presents her back end. The boy's book bag scrapes her back end. And she's complaining about it now. She presents her back end in the lordess's position. There's a Hispanic male behind her that walked up behind her, and she bent over in a lordess's position. And then these ones walked in from the left there, or the right, and the young man, and then she's going nuts here. She's going nuts now, and she has no idea right now what she's going through in her life and what she's going through as a woman. But there's let me go up to what happens after this. Now watch her sexualized movements. She's presenting her back end in a lord. There she goes. Do you see this? Watch her? What she's to a 10-year-old boy. She's making sexual gestures to a 10-year-old boy. A 10-year-old boy she's making. But that's what she did in the big. A lot of people. Let me bring this back down and talk to you guys about this. I'm gonna stop sharing right now, and you get the privilege of seeing my pretty face. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what you're seeing there. Let's talk about what happened there. She's standing at the counter, and I see this all the time. And we would have in my in the society I live in where I live, it's a machoized society. We work steel workers and everything. What would have happened in that position if there was a bunch of guys standing in line there? One of us men would have ran up on her and slapped her so hard on the rear end she would have cried. Yeah, that's what would have happened. And I see it all the time around here when women go into a lordess's position. That's what she did. She went into a sexualized, that's when the woman arches her back and bends over and presents it to the males in back of her like a freaking monkey. I come from an area in a little ways away from where I live now, where it was a traditionalized country. It was highly Christian. And I seen it there too. The men of the neighborhood, if a woman would do that in a store to a child, she would have been considered a pedophile, because the men know of these things. Nowadays, today in society, the young men don't know about these things. The older men aren't allowed to teach the men about women when they go into lordess's position. That's when they arch their back over and present it. This old lady was presenting her rear end in a sexualized position, not to the 10-year-old boy, but to the about 14-year-old boy in back of her that walked up on her and sexually stimulated her. Now, when she started wiggling her hips and presented, she was out of control at that point. She was out of control. She was over-sexualized. She was out of control. But that young 10-year-old man had nothing to do with it. He walked in from the side. It was that 14-year-old boy, Hispanic male that walked up, the first one that walked up, that sent her into a sexual matriarchal, an over-sexualized matriarchal pose where she posed in a lordess's position for him, not seeing the 10-year-old boy that had walked up on her. And then when she, imagine this, she's in that position, she gets back up and she's expecting a male, the alpha male, to react to that. And then she looks up and she sees a 10-year-old boy, and she knows, and somewhere in her mind, it's like, that's my alpha. And that's why she got mad. That's why she got mad. She got hysterically mad, and she went into the Me Too false accusations. But there's scientific reasons why women do things like this. And like I said, in my neighborhood in the 60s and 70s, I probably father know, and I think even Capone knows about this. If a woman would bend over at a counter and present herself, one of us men would have ran up and bam, as hard as you can, right on that butt, on that behind. And she would have cried, and then what would have happened at that point, if there was any women around, the women would have started shaming her for what she did. Because in my time, men and women knew about these things. And I don't know if the kids nowadays, what's going on in their brain, the young men nowadays, at 20, 22, 23 years old, if a woman would have did that at a counter, oh yeah, there would have been. If the police, I've seen this in a store exactly like that back in a little town that I was passing through, and the police did show up, and she was screaming, and the police laughed at her. The police laughed at her, knowing what happened, and the police would never go against the men in those kind of communities back then, in that kind of Christianized community. The men, if the police would have went away against the men, there would have been some violence. But that woman right there should be arrested for pedophilia. Yeah. Yeah, that woman, I'll say it again, that woman right there, this Cornerstone Caroline, she should be either arrested and put in a mental health hospital for doing that, or arrested for pedophilia, because she was presenting her backside to a 10 and a 14-year-old boy. I got some Costa Rican coffee for the event here. And yeah, and that's what would have happened. I've seen this a lot in my life, even when I lived in Cleveland, in the small area that I lived in Cleveland. If a woman would have bent over like that, the men would have known exactly. There was an innate thing in men that know about lordess's position and know about the shame of it. If she would have went into Lourdes's position on that counter, one of us would have did it. It would have probably been there would have been a little we would have been muscling up on each other to see who gets to slap that. And it would have been bam, and it would have been a light slap, like a kitty slap or a sexualized slap. It would have been a slap that would make a full man cry. That's what we would have did back in the day. But today's society is so screwed up, and she gets away with doing a matriarchal pose inside of a convenience, and the police don't say nothing and they don't arrest her. That's the sign of a matriarchal society. That's the sign of a society that we live in today. That's the sign of the corruption in this society that we live in, because men no longer have the freaking ability to identify that kind of poor behavior. Man, if I was in that store, I would have probably been sitting in jail right now, because I would have just slapped that. I would have just slapped it so hard that that she would have been crying. And that was common when I was growing up. When I was young man, 22, 20, 21, 17, 18, 19, even back 15, 14 years old, if a woman would have presented her ass in a Lourdes's position in a public place, oh yeah, it would have been on. Every man in that place would have looked up and went, and it would have been a fight between the men who was going to get there and slap her. That's how things used to be. But today's society, there wasn't a man that was going to touch that. There wasn't a man that was even going to approach that. That woman there too, that mother, she knows what was going on. She knows what that woman was doing, and she should have took that way farther than she did. She was being nice to that woman. She was being nice to that woman. After an over-sexualized position and a pedophilic act towards a minor happens in any place in this country, and I hear all the time, well, I would do this, I would do that. No, you know what? That's big internet talk, because what I see in our country now is most people turn a blind eye to stuff like that, and the government turns a blind eye to stuff like that, and nobody seems to know how to label it anymore in their minds and in their articulate it in their language, what they've seen there. And it's disgusting. Yeah, she deserves a man. If she would have done that up at this corner store with the machismo in this neighborhood, if I was there, first of all, the Hispanic guys would have probably started laughing hysterically at her, and one of them would have slapped it hard. And yeah, and then the Hispanic guys would have tortured her all the way out, just yelling rude things at her, because that shit should never happen. I don't know what kind of community that is there, or how they perceive it, and how America, maybe that's one of those California places or something. Maybe it's down south where they have honor problems, and they don't realize what's going on. Their intelligence is not quite up to par. Maybe, but in Ohio here, I know exactly what happened. I know exactly what happened to that woman if she would have done that in the store. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about a matriarchal society. We could judge a matriarchal society. We look at the bonobo apes, and then it's ever so prevalent among apes and then ape-like creatures and humans and stuff like that. What happens in a matriarchal society is the females, an alpha female, the desirable female, the female that mates and everything, she comes into the area, and then she does that. She presents her back end to all the male recipients of who she wants to mate, and then all the males come up, and the subservient simp males, they come up, and then they have to fight or battle, and then she picks the winner of that tournament team. Now, when you go to a patriarchal society, which I'm talking about, where someone just runs up and they smack that thing and throw that thing out of the store and say, none of that. We have a subservient patriarchal society that acquiesces to that. And that's when it becomes a matriarchal society of bonobos and apes, and we become no better than the apes. But it takes a little reading, and it takes a little male instruction. And the boys, they're not getting the correct male instruction anymore. The boys, I'll tell you what, if I talked about this around my son and boys of his age and younger, most of them have no idea what was going on there. Most of the, I've instructed my son. I says, when you walk as a PUA, if you're doing the PUA thing, and I've showed him this, as the PUA thing, when you walk into a meeting place, a bar, a thing and everything, that's the behavior you look for if you want to tag one that night. You're gonna scan the whole room, and then there's gonna be a female somewhere in that room that is sexualized at that point. She wants to do that. She wants to have children, and her back end is gonna go out like that, and that's how you tell. It's pickup artistry is hugely insane to me, because I can walk into a room, I can go like this, and I know exactly which ones will leave with you that day and exactly which ones won't, by the arching of their back end and the way they present themselves. And it takes about 15 seconds to realize that. So I had to instruct my son one day. I took him down to the local pubbery down there, and I was like, which one are you looking for? And he couldn't figure it out. I says, look at that one over there. What is she doing? And that's Lourdes' behavior. They put on high heel shoes to present that. They do things to do that. Every male should know these things, and it shouldn't be something that you have to learn out of a book either. These are things that you are innately born with. You're innately born with smell, sight, hearing, feeling. Male sexuality, you're innately born with this ability to scan a room and know these things. But today, in today's society, I got to question whether men are innately born with these things, with the ability to smell, with the ability to observe, with the ability to know what's going on there. And yes, we are going from a patriarchal society to a matriarchal society, unless us men start teaching our boys correctly. You're sending your boys off to socialist schools, German socialist schools, and you wonder why they're being taught wrong. God. Yeah. Which goes back to the breaking up of the Catholic Church and the breaking up of the Catholic. They didn't break up the Catholic Church; they broke up the Catholic schooling system. So you don't teach boys how to think correctly anymore, and then they inserted the German system into there. That's what that was about, if you kind of missed it. So hello, man. With the ass cheeks fully spread, Reno would hit that raw. Yeah, Eli would hit that. Yeah. No, but it's important to teach guys this stuff, because they don't know. They don't know about Lourdes's. You can look it up. It's spelled correctly in the low bar. I think it's spelled correctly in maybe. No, I didn't write it down there. I'll write it down there. You can go look it up online, and they'll give you an example of a rat and how the rat extends its behind up, and then we can take that. We can look at bonobo apes and human apes, and yeah, we are human apes. And how women, the lesser of the human ape, does that into how she shows her sexuality, how she shows when she's breeding. Sexual cryptis determines that the human female. It determines that the human female, there's no signs of her mating period. She doesn't present signs of her mating period. That's what the theory of sexual cryptis says. But I have to call bullshit on that, because there are two signs that of when a woman are mating. Lourdes's position is one, and smell. Human males have lost the ability to smell in an animal type way, like a dog hunting. We should have that ability too. Males should have that ability to smell, but we're overstimulated. There's too many people around. I'm sure if they put you in the woods for about 5 years, and men ran around the woods. And I've noticed this in my life when I spent a lot of time away from people in the woods. When I came back, one of my complaints was to my buddy all the time was, man, the women smell. I could smell them fucking everywhere. And your sense of smell, and I can smell when they're breeding. I can smell when they're in heat. I can smell when they put that perfume on. I can smell the fall. There used to be this woman that come around, and she would sit down around me, and I'd be like, oh, because I could smell she didn't bathe a lot. No, none of the guys knew it. All the other guys were like, hey, man, she's kind of hot. And I was like, no, she's not. She is so not hot. That smells. It smells bad. And it smells like bacteria. Now, men have lost that ability because we walk outside and there's 1,000 people and there's 1,000 scents and there's 1,000 things hitting you at once. That's why that's why I talk about pheromones a lot, because men are being saturated by 1,000 scents of pheromone in any given situation in their life. And we wonder why boys are confused. They wonder why boys are over-sexualized. They wonder why boys aren't making good decisions nowadays, and we wonder about the Me Too movement and all that stuff. Yeah, think about that as a human animal. Your innate ability to detect these things are just in your lizard brain, and there shouldn't be something that needs to be explained to you. It's in your lizard brain. It's already pre-programmed. It's like a computer program that runs in you that's faulty. We have malicious hardware coming into us right now, and we have faulty computers in our brains because of all the because of the communal atmosphere that we have to live in. And one of the things that go haywire is to detect as a male when a woman is breeding and when she's not breeding. So sexual cryptis, the theory of sexual cryptis, in a way, it'll tell you about why a woman does this, and her thing is to reproduce and to find the house, to collect resources and stuff like that. And it gives us a few great examples of like the brush turkey, the brush turkey, you know how brush turkeys pick their mate. They pick the mate with the biggest, smelliest mound of dirt and hay that he put there, and he put a little hole in there, and that way she can run in there and have her little chicklings or whatever that is. But the best example is the starfish. Probably we're talking about biology and sociology, which nobody wants to talk about, but yeah, so and movements of creatures and stuff is sociology, and we are creatures, and sociology has a lot to do with the way we believe about the way we behave. I see the modern MGTOW going, oh, sociology. It's like, no, sociology tells us about ourselves, and that's where we learn about how people behave, about how women behave, and we understand what exactly happened there. It wasn't a Me Too thing. That was an out-of-control matriarchal woman trying to present her backside in public, and she should have been arrested. Back about 15, 16 years ago when we started this thing, this MGTOW thing, and we all started grouping up and everything, these are the things we used to talk about. We used to talk about the behavior. We used to talk about the biology. We used to talk about lordosis behavior. We used to shame them for that because we all knew about that. But in the last 20 years here, men have lost that innate ability, and I don't know what it is. Like I said, it's oversaturation. It's estrogen in the water. It's a lot of things. It's the convergence of the matriarchal society on the men. Pretty soon that'll be commonplace where a woman goes out into public, she arches her back, and then all the apes start like fighting over her, and then she picks the victor. Yeah, that's the kind of Jacana world we want to live in. Jacana is a good example of that. Down in Brazil, if you get called a Jacana, it's a real insult. If you get in Colombia and in Venezuela, if you get called a Peru, especially too, if you get called a Chicana, it's like, oh man, what'd you say to me? That's like calling you a cuck, because the Chicana bird is the typical example of the male cuck. The female lays eggs, and jacana bird sits on the eggs. The male sits on the eggs. He's like the dodo bird. He sits on the eggs and he hatches. What happens in that thing is other jacana females are flying around looking for that nest, and she flies in. And then she kicks that male's ass, because the jacana birds are actually, the females are actually bigger because they're matriarchal. And then she smashes the eggs of the other female, presents her, and then she takes the male, and the male and the female fly off together. And then she breeds with that male. And then his job again, she picks the cuck male that can't protect the nest to sit on those eggs, and then this vicious cycle of jacana egg smashing happens. So, but that's the cuck male. That's pathetic society that we're about to live in, unless us males do something about this. We have to do something. When you see something like that, that Cornerstone, and they named her Cornerstone. You know why? It was a Christian thing, Cornerstone. Abortion clinic. So they knew in their minds, they knew when they named that Cornerstone Caroline, when they knew she was sexually, they knew she was sexually assaulting a young man in that position. So she should be in jail right now. The society knew the norm. She violated the norms. Everybody knows. It made it on YouTube, but is she being prosecuted? No. Would you prosecute the bonobo female ape for doing that? That's how matriarchal our society is now. And we wonder about the P pass. You give the women the P pass. Of course you do, because we live in a matriarchal society. Jackasses. God. But that's what the original reason. I think that the biggest part of MGTOW, when back in the day when we first started these things, them are the things we would talk about. Them are the things that we knew what had happened there. I see now the MGTOWs, they're going, oh, that's me too. That's not me too. That's so much more than me too. You got to do secondary step thinking in these things, and you got to ask yourself what exactly happened there. But we're so lazy as a society, and our intelligence has dropped so low. It's almost I tell my son all the time, man, I'm ashamed to live around so many stupid people. I'm so ashamed of that in my life. But yeah, these are the things. This is what brought MGTOW into fruition. This very thing right here, because men started noticing the shift of a patriarchal society into a matriarchal society due to blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. You know what it's due to? It's due to simp men not taking care of business at home. It's due to simp men not taking care of business in that grocery store. Somebody should have ran up on that old piece of trash and just smacked it. And that's what would have happened in my neighborhood. I'm sure of it. There's two corner stores up there. If a woman does that in there, it's on. It's on. And all the men don't apologize for it. The men will not apologize to it or for it. And the women, they'll look around and they're judging at that point. In my neighborhood, if the women don't agree with with the smack down that happened, oh yeah, we're going to ostracize you from the society too. We're going to chastise you too, because you don't understand. But it is really hard. I know probably in California and some of those sissy spots that are they're oversaturated with estrogen and everything. It's hard to get men to act like men anymore. And we complain about it all the time, but when an example comes up where we see it right in front of your face, and the men have no way of articulating how they're feeling or everything, it's just a lack of education. It just makes me crazy. It just makes me absolutely crazy anymore what I see in society. But that's all I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to watch football games today. I'm going to do man stuff today, and I wanted to do this early, and I didn't want to let this run too long. But for the men that don't understand that, I mean, men, get out there, teach these young boys, take that clip of that Cornerstone Caroline and explain section by section what happened there and what a Mgtow sees, what a man sees, how a man should react in those situations when that happens. In my area, if that was as soon as her ass came up off that counter and she bent over like that, one of us would have just bam, we'd have reddened that up, and she would have been crying, and we wouldn't apologize for it. But in today's society, matriarchal bonobo ape rules rule, and it's disgusting, and it makes me sick. This woman should be that Cornerstone Caroline. She should be in jail right now for presenting her backside to the 14-year-old boy that had walked up. It wasn't a 10-year-old boy that turned her on. It was a 14-year-old boy that she noticed in back of her. And that's why that behavior exists today. And it's absolutely craziness that nobody in that community sees it like I do. And in this community, there would be an uproar. It's like, whoa, no, not here. I mean, maybe there's too much machismo in this community. I would say there's not enough of it, or else these sort of things wouldn't happen. But that's all I wanted to talk about today. And I'm going to let you guys go, let you guys have a great day, and you guys can get out. Now, always remember, men, go your own way. And most of all, thanks for being Mgtow. Mgtows.